Hey everybody, welcome back to the YouTube channel and welcome to my little preview and predictions video for UFC 259. Of course, I'm Tom Albano. You can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at Thomas J. Albano. Check out my work, Fansided MMA, MMA Prospects, the way you appropriately stylize MMA prospects down there in the description. In the little ticker, and on Empty the Bench, of course. So UFC 259. I wanted to do a little preview video today. I wanted to do it a little later, but of course, no fights miraculously fell off due to COVID or weight issues or anything like that. So I had to move this up a little all of a sudden. But hey, gotta give credit where credit is due to the UFC. If you have a look at the card that we've got going on here today, let me see if I can pull this up here. Just look at this. Look how stacked this is. This is just the early prelims. And then, of course, you move on to the preliminary card itself. You got Benavidez and Askarov, number 2, number 3, the flyweight division facing off. 2 top 10s at flyweight and Bontorin in France. Dominick Cruz, the former bantamweight champion, is fighting on the prelims. Thiago Santos and Aleksandar Rakic. Come on. That's a 5-rounder. If you were to book them on a UFC fight night, that would be a 5-round main event. Seriously, that would. You got 2 guys looking to make up the next step, that jump at the lightweight ladder between Makhachev and Dober. And, of course, 3 title fights. Jan and Sterling, Nunes Anderson, and the big one, Blachowicz and Adesanya. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a look at the card going from bottom to the top. We're going to go from bottom to top here, starting with the early prelims and making our way up to the main event. So let's start with the early prelims. Let's start with Mario Bautista taking on Trevin Jones. Let's see if I can share a screen. Let's see if I can get to the topology. Let's bring you guys here. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at these fighters. So let's start first of all with Mr. Trevin Jones. Of course, Trevin Jones, as you can see here, was scheduled to take on Mario Bautista. Trevin Jones was scheduled to take on Randy Costa, but an injury to Costa has delayed his first MMA bout for 2021. Instead, he gets Mario Bautista. So Trevin Jones, 5'7", 70-inch reach advantage, coming out of Vita BJJ, if that's correct here on Tapology. Now, if you remember, Trevin Jones had quite a comeback in his UFC debut back in August. He was rocked by Valiev. He looked like the fight was going to be called. I was surprised it wasn't called in that first round. All of a sudden, they fight in the second, and then all of a sudden it's Jones who rocks Valiev, puts him on the canvas, ends up getting the TKO victory. Absolute stunner. However, that's been overturned to a no contest. I'm not exactly 100% sure why that was overturned. I believe, it was a marijuana. Tested positive for marijuana. So, that can't take away from how good Jones looked. Jones looked pretty bad in that first round, but how incredible that comeback was. How incredible that comeback was in the second round. So 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. And then you're taking on Mario Bautista, who is 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. So little interesting matchup here. I can't exactly get the biggest read on it, but from what I'm seeing here, Jones can obviously be hurt. Mario Bautista, we've seen that he can damage people very early on. I'm not writing a Mario Bautista KO TKO win because Jones, if he wasn't stopped by Valiev in that first round, I'm honestly surprised. Wait a minute. Then again, the referee was Chris Taglioni. Sorry, I had to take my Taglioni shots in there. But Mario Bautista, he does have finishing ability. I believe he's finished most of his fights. Let's see. punches. Yeah, I mean, very early on in his professional career, he did get finishes. He was submitted in his UFC debut in January 2019, but that was against Corey Sandhagen, who obviously is a top contender in that division right now. He might actually get the winner of Jan versus Sterling, or he's going to get the TJ Dillashaw fight in a title eliminator. Unanimous decision win over Jinsu Sun, and he had that impressive flying knee against Miles Johns. The Bautista seems to have more upside in my head. That Johns fight, he looked really good. I'm going to go with Mario Bautista here, obviously. It's just a matter of, I don't know when the finish would come. If it does come, I think this could probably be a unanimous decision. If anything, maybe it's like late second round or some point in the third round when this gets done. But regardless, Bautista is going to be my pick here. Looking now at Uros Medic and Alan Cruz. So for Medic, this is actually going to be his UFC debut. He's coming out of Alaska. He is 6'1", 71-inch reach. And meanwhile, his opponent, Alan Cruz, who I believe lost his UFC debut. Yeah, he won a contender series against Stephen Gwynn. He had that impressive last-second flying knee. However, he lost. He was easily finished in less than 90 seconds by Spike Carlyle. Now, Spike Carlyle is no longer with the UFC after losses to Billy Quarantino and Bill Algeo. So, I mean, that's kind of bad. He hasn't fought since that Spike Carlyle fight, which was in February. So it's been just over 1 year since we've seen Alan Cruz. Shout out to one of my mentors in this game, James Lynch, who got an interview with Alan Cruz, and Alan Cruz was basically talking about how he just recently moved to Extreme Couture. He wanted to find the right fight, and if you actually notice, he is moving up to lightweight for this one. Now, a lot of people are saying that Medic is going to run through Cruz. I don't buy that, and I will go one further. I think Cruz is going to get the upset win. I know if I want to give a little plug here to my guys at MMA Prospects, who we do the weekly series on fighters who are making their UFC debut, and a lot of the guys over there don't exactly seem to be all too impressed with Medic, and they want to see a little more from him. I mean, Medic, from what I've seen and what they've seen, not too much to offer on the ground. I remember one of them, I think it might have been Sean Bitter, the MMA wizard, shout out to him, saying that he's seen Medic fight more on his back on the ground, which doesn't sound good. And then Medic, he has okay striking. I mean, at best, it's not the worst, but it's not the best. Now, one thing here, however, that's got me a little concerned is the level of competition. That to me is that's a stickler to me. So if you look at Uros Medic's fight, opponent record, okay, his professional debut in 2016, 2-0 fighter. He ended up getting the finish there. Then he didn't fight again until January of 2018. Got the finish on a guy who's 4-4, 1-4, 0-1, 5-0. And then he defeated Mikey Gonzalez on the Contender Series. Impressive 2-minute kick to ground and pound. But if you have a look at Mikey Gonzalez, he has a 7-1 record, yes. But if you look at his opponent history, 0-2, 18-20-1, 18-19-1, 2-7, 9-6, 1-4. Not exactly facing the best of competition. And if you look at Alonzo Laceholm Jr.'s competition, and he was 5-0. He fought, 6-3 and a bunch of 0-0s. And then I noticed the promotion that Medic was fighting for, Alaska FC. Now, for those of you who don't know too much about Alaska FC, a lot of mismatch making. Best way I can put it. Stuff that I've seen in terms of when I look at the opponent history, like I said, I'm a big stickler about that. James Lynch has mentioned that. Alaska FC, I have a lot of skepticism about that. I have a lot of skepticism. I'm not too overly impressed with Medic. So I'm going to go with the UFC experience. It wasn't too much UFC experience, but I'm going to go with Cruz. Plus, Cruz has a 6-inch reach advantage, so I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with Alon Cruz. Now, that being said, I don't think Alon Cruz is going to get the finish. I think this is going to be a decision. Now, Sean Brady. Actually, hold on. I'm skipping a fight here. Levina Souza against Amanda Lemos. Let's take a look at that one. So, Levina Souza has a 5 foot. She's 5'3", 63-inch reach. She ended up getting the. Let's see. She was a Invicta alumnus. Did she win a title? No, she did not win a title in Invicta. She had a good run in Invicta though, going 4-1. Yeah, 4-1. Made her UFC debut in September 2018. Submission of Alex Chambers. Split decision win over Safrota. Lost to Brianna Van Buren. That's not a bad loss. Brianna Van Buren, a former Invicta strawweight champion, and won the first Invicta, I believe it's the Phoenix Series tournament. I believe Van Buren was the winner of that, so not a bad loss. And then rebounded with a win over Ashley Yoder back at UFC 252 in August. She'll be taking on Amanda Lemos, 8-1-1. Amanda Lemos, definitely a finisher, at least early on in her career, and jungle fight and all, and in Brazil. Lost her UFC debut in 2017 to Leslie Smith. Didn't fight at all in 2018, and since then choked out Miranda Granger and scored a unanimous decision over Mizuki Ino. Don't exactly have the best read on this fight. She's 5'4", 65-inch reach. I am actually going to go with 5'3", 63. 5'3", 63, 5'4", 65. This one's a little tough. It's a little hard to read. You have Souza with her jiu-jitsu experience, coached under Vinicius Maximo. And I'll say this seems like... Oh, and Lemos with the Moreau brothers team. This one seems to be even. I'm not sure if I can say even. I just don't have the best read on this one. But I'm going to go with Levina Souza, and I'm going to say by decision. All right. Now let's get to what I think is probably the best fight on this early preliminary card. Sean Brady, 13-0, taking on the 17-4 Jake Matthews. Two top welterweight prospects, both looking to take that next level. Sean Brady, of course, on quite a roll, going back to his days with the CFFC to start his MMA career. Did he end up catching a championship? Yeah, he won the Cage Fury welterweight title back in 2017. Had a couple of fights with Shogun. Had a fight in Shogun fights and a fight in the LFA outside of the CFFC, but he just looked great in the CFFC, primarily a finisher. Ends up jumping over to the UFC in 2019, gets the decision win over Court McGee, gets the decision win over Ismail Nuradiev, and ends up choking out Christian Aguilera back in August. Definitely high here on Sean Brady. Great all-around fighter, training out of Renzo Gracie, Philadelphia, if that's correct. I'd say probably one of the better. Oh, yeah, he's 5'10", 72.5-inch reach. He's 28 years old, so think about it. He's just hitting his prime now. He is just hitting his prime. So definitely he is going to be looking to take the next step up. And Sean Brady, on that note, was, I think, trying to get a fight with Bilal Muhammad, who's going to be challenging Leon Edwards next week in a big opportunity for Muhammad. So that just goes to show you that, it can be argued that Brady should be facing top 10, top 15 level competition. Now, Jake Matthews, he originally started as a lightweight fighter, and he struggled to get consistent success early on. He actually won 4 or 5 at the start of his UFC career. That one loss was coming to James Vick. Losing to Kevin Lee, not a bad loss there. Losing to Andrew Holbrook. Let's see. Then he racks up 3 straight wins, including a win over Li Jinglang, and then lose to Anthony Rocco Martin. Then he's on a 3-fight win streak. Defeated Emil Weber-Meek back in February. Defeated Diego Sanchez back at UFC 253. And he's 5'11", 72-inch reach. Sean Brady here, 5'10", 72.5-inch reach. like I mentioned, this one a little tough here. Oh, I forgot I was going to bring up the odds for all these fights. So looking at the, hang on 1 second here. Sorry guys, a little bit of technical difficulty. There we go. Okay, Mario Bautista, Trevin Jones, but Bautista minus 225, so I'm picking right there. Cruz is a plus 144 underdog. Souza is a plus 172 underdog. Lemos is a minus 215 favorite going back to that fight. I don't know if that's exactly the best odds on that one. Sean Brady a minus 230. Jake Matthews plus 180. I think that one's right. Brady just impresses me more. Brady, both guys are hot, looking to take that next step up. Brady is streaking. He has the brighter prospect. Matthews has been doing better at welterweight, but he has that win over G Lang. He's fought Bronco Martin. He's fought Kevin Lee. But I just don't know. I just don't know if he's ready to take that next step. And how old is Jake Matthews? Oh, Jake Matthews is only 26, so he has time. I think Sean Brady is better all around, and he's about to get into that prime level. I think Brady's ready. Even though Matthews has more UFC experience, I think this could be a coming out party for Sean Brady. So I'm going to go with Sean Brady. All right. Now we go to the next on the early prelims. This is a long early prelims card. Actually, 6 fights. Like I said, none of the fights fell off to COVID, so surprising there. Kennedy Nzjoku taking on Carlos Ulberg. Carlos Ulberg does not have a lot of MMA experience. He's only 3-0, but he has a lot of hype around him in the light heavyweight scene. And Kennedy Nzjoku, of course. Nzjoku training with Kai Kara-France, Alex Volkanovski, and Israel Adesanya over at City Kickboxing. Of course, one of the best gyms there are right now in MMA. Actually, no, pardon me. He's training at Fortis MMA, one of the better gyms at MMA. Ulberg is the teammate of Adesanya, Volkanovski, and Kara-France. So you got two prospects here come from 2 great camps. So this one's going to be an interesting battle here. So, like I mentioned, Ulberg is primarily more a kickboxer. Doesn't have a lot of experience with mixed martial arts. He had a fight over in 2011, then didn't fight in MMA again until 2018, scoring a unanimous decision win over John Martin Fraser over an Eternal MMA over there in Oceania, and then taking on Bruno Oliveira, ends up knocking out Bruno Oliveira in about 2 minutes. I know Bruno Oliveira has some hype around him. Not exactly, I'm not exactly his biggest fan. Not exactly as impressed by him. 30 years old, Ulberg is 6'4", 77-inch reach advantage. Taking on Kennedy Nzjoku, 6'5", 83-inch reach advantage. That's a big reach advantage for Ulberg to have to overcome. Nzjoku, of course. Let's see. I mean, he wasn't facing the best of competition early on. 9-9, 0-0, 5-1. Okay, that was a split decision against Anton Berzin the first time Kennedy fought on the Contender Series. Of course, didn't get the contract. Ends up fighting Andre Kavanaugh in XKO. Gets the first round finish there. Ends up finishing Corey Johnson, who was 0-0. Kavanaugh, by the way, 7-13. But he does come back the next year on Contender Series. Ends up knocking out Dennis Bryant just under 2 minutes. Gets the contract. Loses his UFC debut to Paul Craig, submission specialist, ends up actually getting finished in the 3rd round after a decent showing in the first couple of rounds. But it's Paul Craig. Paul Craig is a submission specialist. Looks great. And then Kennedy ends up fighting Draco Stosic in his most recent fight back in August of 2019. So it's been a little bit of a layoff. For Kennedy here. Ulberg, like I said, more of a kickboxer. We haven't seen much of him from the MMA world, but I think this is a good matchup for him. This is 2 primarily stand-up fighters. I'd say both of them are going to be swinging for the fences, I feel. But as much as Ulberg doesn't have the UFC experience, and I'm still high on Kennedy, I'll take Ulberg. A lot of people are buying into Ulberg's hype. Actually, if you take a look at take a look at the predictions here on Tapology. 79% believe Olberg is going to get the victory. 80% believe it's going to be by knockout or TKO. I'll buy into the hype. I'll go with a second or third round finish for Olberg, but I do think I do still need to see a little more. Actually, I just realized I wasn't using the graphics here. I apologize. So moving on now to Tim Elliott, Jordan Espinosa. Good fight here at flyweight. And this is the early prelim headliner. So you have a look at Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott, of course, is a UFC veteran. This is actually his second stint in the UFC. Ended up winning the Ultimate Fighter Season 24. Got a title shot against Demetrius Johnson in his return. Lost by unanimous decision. We know about Elliott. He struggles with consistency. He ended up dropping 3 in a row between 2019 and 2020. But I mean, the losses are coming to Deiveson Figueiredo, Askar, Askarov, and Brandon Royval. And he actually troubled Royval early on in that fight. And the thing about Tim Elliott is we know he makes mistakes. That's the big thing, is sometimes his fight IQ isn't exactly the greatest. Elliott, I believe, ended up guessing out against Royval and ended up getting submitted. Elliott, he's a great all-around fighter, especially when it comes to the ground. He's great with that. But sometimes he just makes those 1 or 2 mistakes and his opponents are able to capitalize it. That being said, Jordan Espinosa, another guy here who struggles when facing higher-level competition. Obviously, he got the last-second finish against Riley Turturro on the Contender Series way back when, and actually finished Nick Urso in his first appearance on Contender Series back in 2017. He defeated Eric Shelton in his UFC debut, lost to Matt Schnell, first round finish, lost to Alex Perez, who ended up going as a title challenger, win over Mark De La Rosa. De La Rosa actually has been released by the UFC last year, and then dropped a decision to David Dvorak. So as much as Elliott, has struggled against higher level competition, I mean, he did look great in his last fight against Ryan Benoit, and I believe that was his first UFC fight since switching over to Glory MMA. Glory MMA, another great gym. Elliott looked better there. Espinosa struggles with higher level fighters. He hasn't exactly been on the greatest of stretches. This is a big opportunity for Tim Elliott to really, show that he is one of the better flyweight fighters in the world. Like I said, even though he had the losing streak, there were just some legitimate upper echelon names in this division. So you know what? I'm going to go with Tim Elliott. I'm not sure if he's going to get the finished. I'm going to go with a unanimous decision, however. All right. Moving on now to Rogerio Bontorin taking on Kai Kara-France. So definitely an interesting start to the televised prelims. So Kai Kara-France, who's ranked Tapology ranks him number 8. Oh, and the odds, by the way, for the Elliott Espinosa match. Espinosa's a -124 favorite. Elliott's a +102 underdog. I'm not sure if I agree with that, and that's great value on Tim Elliott, who comes in ranked number 12. So I think that's a fight I would bet. Now, both of these guys, Kara-France and Bontorin, they're ranked number 8. They're tied for number 8 in the UFC rankings. Kara-France, -141 favorite. Bontorin, +115 underdog. Kara-France coming in. Let me get up the statistics here. Kara-France, 5'4", Bontorin, 5'5". Kara-France, 2-inch reach advantage. Definitely a better striker, though he has absorbed a little more damage. But I think some of that you can credit to some of the wars that he's been in. Going back to his run, let's see his run in the UFC. Win over Elias Garcia, Rolian Paiva, Mark De La Rosa. Loss, Tyson Nam, he has defeated. He had a loss to Brandon Moreno in between the De La Rosa and Nam fight. Like Moreno, title challenger, ended up having one of the best flyweight fights of all time recently with Deiveson Figueiredo. Brandon Royval, second round finish, and it was an absolutely wild first round. So Kara-France definitely has a lot of potential. And then, like I mentioned, training at City Kickboxing, so training with the likes of Volkanovski and Israel Adesanya. Bontorin, training out of Gile Ribeiro team, if that's correct. Definitely the better ground fighter. This one, he pulls off a submission attempt, usually at least one every fight. Definitely hasn't absorbed as much damage, but like I mentioned, Kara-France is definitely more strike-up battle. This is, let's call it for what it is. This is the grappler versus the striker. Now, Bontorin has decent striking himself. Kara-France, even though he hasn't always won as of late, even though he's lost 2 of 3, like I mentioned, Moreno and Royval, 2 great names. I'm going to go with Kara-France here. I think this one's going to be entertaining, but I think Kara-France, let me see Kara-France's takedown defense. 90% takedown defense. So that's going to be a little tough for Bontorin to get around. So I'm going to go Kara-France here by decision. Joseph Benavidez taking on Askarov. What a fight. And on the prelims. Come on, man. So going to bring up those statistics now. Benavidez, 5'4". He'll give up 2 inches in height to Askarov, as well as 2 inches in reach. Askarov also the younger fighter by 8 years. Benavidez lands just a little more in terms of the strikes landed per minute. Askarov the more accurate striker. They're fairly even in terms of defense. Maybe Benavidez just by a little bit more. Askarov usually scores a couple of takedowns in a fight, but they seem to be a little more on point too. So this one's a little even of a battle. The question is, what is Joseph Benavidez fighting for, and what does he have left? Obviously, Benavidez unsuccessfully challenged Demetrius Johnson twice for flyweight title fights back in 20. I know they fought in the inaugural title fight in 2012, and I believe the next title shot came in 2013, maybe 2014. And then, of course, he had the 2 fights with Deiveson Figueiredo last year, losing both. So, I mean, what can Benavidez get another title shot? I highly doubt it. You don't see these guys getting these kinds of title shots. Benavidez, I think, may have a little edge on the ground, although there's a lot more of an even battle than I went in thinking. Plus, Askarov has got some dangerous striking himself. I don't know if we can say as dangerous as the power that Figueiredo brings. I highly doubt that, but he does have some striking power. But Benavidez can match with him, I think, on the feet and can match with him on the ground. Big question also, Askarov missing weight. He missed by a pound. I think he had an hour or so to weigh in, but elected not to weigh in again. That's a big blown opportunity for Askarov. This is number 2 versus number 3. Askarov had the chance to basically put himself in line to probably face the winner of the Figueiredo-Moreno rematch that's going to happen in June, I think. This weight miss, though, I mean, that kind of hurts, and it's going to especially hurt if he loses to Benavidez, which I think is going to happen. I'm going to go with Benavidez by decision. But if Askarov does get the finish, I mean, maybe he will get the title shot. I don't know if you can tell, especially in the case of what happened with Yoel Romero a couple of years back. It seems like the UFC doesn't exactly care all too much when a fighter misses weight. Just my opinion. So now moving on to Song Yadong and Kyler Phillips. Taking a look at that tail of the tape here. So Song Yadong has Song Yadong gives up 5 inches in reach to Kyler Phillips. Big ouch, but they have the same height. Yadong a little younger. Strikes landed per minute. Actually, Kyler Phillips doesn't have a lot of UFC experience. Only 3 fights in the UFC. Let me bring up that here. Kyler Phillips, he's 8-1. Let's see. He has the first round finish of Emeka Ifekandu, decision win over Gabriel Silva, and second round finish of Cameron Else. Now, I believe that, as I say, he's not in the UFC anymore. Ifekandu is. Gabriel Silva, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Lost to Ray Borg, and then that lost to Kyler Phillips, and we haven't seen him since. And then we have Cameron Else, who's 10-5. That was his UFC debut. Kyler Phillips. The thing about Kyler Phillips, this is primarily going to be a striker battle. Song Yadong, he hasn't faced, Kyler Phillips hasn't faced a better competition. Song Yadong, let's see. Win over Marlon Vera. Majority draw against Cody Stamann. Many people believe maybe he should have lost against Stamen, win over Alejandro Perez, win over Vince Morales, and Orantes. Like, the thing is, maybe some people think Song Yadong, doesn't have as great a skills as what he's promoted to be, but I like Song Yadong. I think he's growing as a fighter. He might have had some stumbles, but he's like the Stamen fight, but he has faced the better competition and he has the victories to go along with it. So that being said, I'm going to go with Song Yadong by unanimous decision in this one. Okay, now we get to the main prelim. Finally get to the main prelim. Dominick Cruz, Casey Kenney. Looking at the statistics in this one here. Actually, hang on. I accidentally closed out of the odds on page. So let me get back. Sorry, guys. One-man show. And a little sudden because of the change to the main card. I mean, change to the early prelim card earlier today, moving up 45 minutes. Askarov is actually the favorite against Benavidez. France the favorite against Bontorin. Askarov at minus 134, Benavidez plus 110. I think that's great value for Benavidez. Song Yadong minus 141, Phillips plus 115. Now Dominick Cruz is a plus 110 against Casey Kenney, who's a minus 137. Looking at the tail of the tape now, 40 Cruz Kenney fight. Cruz has a 1-inch height edge. Both have the same reach. Kenney lands more strikes per minute. Seems to be the better striker, although he has also absorbed damage. Cruz, of course, a great defensive fighter. Cruz averaging multiple takedowns in a fight and an 83% takedown defense. But the thing about Dominick Cruz is, of course, the injuries. He hasn't fought too much over the last decade. He ended up, I remember the UFC 178 comeback. That was his first fight in like a year and a half, 2 years. Ended up not fighting in 2015. Defeated TJ Dillashaw for the bantamweight title at the start of 2016. Ends up beating Uriah Faber to retain the title later that year. Loses the title to Cody Garbrandt. And then we don't see him fight again until the fight with Cejudo back at 249. So the thing about Dominick Cruz, the question is, how much does he have in the tank? Obviously, great defender of takedowns, great defender overall on the stand-up. Kenney is a dangerous grappler. Kenney's stand-up is pretty okay. But how much does Cruz have in the tank? All these long layoffs. Is he still, the number one? I know he's ranked number 11, but is he still at that level? And I mean, Kenney is a big up-and-comer in that bantamweight division. I just don't know. I just don't see it anymore in Cruz. I got to see a better performance than what we saw against Cejudo. I got to see more from Cruz. The loss to Cejudo, that was his first fight in over 3 years. Lost to Garbrandt. He kind of got one-sided beaten down. So I need to see more from Cruz. I think this is a big opportunity for Casey Kenney to make his name known. I mean, his name is already known as a up-and-comer that division, but to take that next level, this is a great fight for him. And I think he actually has some great value. Minus 137 favorite. I think those odds are a little too close. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to go with Kenney by decision. No brainer on that one. I need to see more from Cruz before I can start picking him again. So now let's get to the main card here. Thiago Santos take on Aleksandar Rakic. Like I mentioned, it's insane. These two could be on a fight night card and be a 5-round headliner, but they're going to be opening the pay-per-view card here. Rakic, 2-inch heighted edge, actually also a 2-inch reach edge, the younger fighter here. So the thing about Aleksandar Rakic, and I went over the main card for an article on Fansided MMA, which you can check out. So Santos obviously has the losses to... Actually, I have better notes here. So actually, let me bring up the UFC page here in just a second. There we go. So that's the prelim odds. Let's go to the main card. Thiago Santos, plus 138 underdog. Aleksandar Rakic, minus 167 favorite. And I think those are right. Santos has the loss to Jones, has the loss to Shera. But if you remember Santos, there were people who thought Santos won that fight against Jon Jones. And it was a split decision. He was the first fighter ever to take a scorecard away from Jon Jones. So you got to give credit where credit's due. And he also looked very hot against Teixeira to start. But Teixeira ended up coming back, getting the submission of Santos. Little damaging. But if you also look at Santos's fight performances, he's great at light heavyweight. He ended up moving up to light heavyweight. That short notice fight with Eric Anders. Finished Jimmy Manuwa. Ended up finishing Jan Blachowicz, who is the current champion, before that fight with Jones. So there's a lot of momentum. You know, those fights against Jones and Teixeira, those losses, I mean, can be damaging, but Santos, he's proven himself. He's still one of the best light heavyweights in the world. And Aleksandar Rakic, let's see, Devin Clark, I mean, he ended up winning against Francimar Barroso and Justin Lizette in his first 2 UFC fights. Devin Clark, he got in trouble early on at UFC 231, but ends up coming back and gets the first round finish. He had that highly impressive, but still in my mind to this day, that head kick knockout of Jimmy Manuwa. Absolutely impressive. Losing that split decision to Volkan Oezdemir, I call BS on that one. I thought Rakic won that fight. And then Anthony Smith. Now I know, he defeated Anthony Smith in a Fight Night main event back in August. I know some people have criticized Rakic for not finishing that fight, but you also have to remember something. As much as Smith was coming in damaged off that loss to Glover Teixeira, where he just took an unnecessary extra amount of damage, the fight with Rakic was actually moved up to the main event after a COVID situation. So they only had 3 rounds. Rakic didn't have as much time as he should have with Smith. And who knows, maybe in that 4th or 5th round, he should have, he would have been able to get that finish. So both these guys are still 2 of the best light heavyweights in the world for all the criticisms that you want to give them, either with the loss to Teixeira in Santos's case or the not being able to finish Smith in Rakic's case. And it's crazy. These 2 are terrific, tough fighters. This is one of the toughest fights to bet. This and one of the championship fights, which I'm going to get into in just a little bit, are going to be 2 of the tougher fights to pick. Both have great finishing ability. Both are great with the striking. Rakic has excellent takedown defense. And he averages just under 1 in terms of his takedown average. I think this one's primarily going to be on the feet. Maybe this one goes to the ground a couple of times. But I think this one's primarily fought on the feet. I think Rakic has just a little more in the tank, just a little more momentum that he ekes out a decision victory. But this one's tough to predict. I can't wait for this one. That one's a great fight, a great opener to the main card. And now moving up to Islam Makhachev and Drew Dober. Makhachev a -335 favorite, Dober a +250. That's a little steep in my opinion. Dober, you got to give credit to them. So let's take a look at their fight history. Makhachev, UFC, if you've been noticing some of their social media stuff leading up to fight week outside of the 3 title fights, a lot of hype around Makhachev, who of course I believe has been training with Khabib Nurmagomedov. But we haven't seen Makhachev since September 2019. He's the former. Did he win a belt in M1 or was he just... No, he was just an M1 competitor. Regardless, he had a great run in M1 prior to coming to the UFC. Makhachev ends up choking out Leo Kuntz in his UFC debut at UFC 187. Gets finished by Adriano Martins in just over 100 seconds. It'd be 106 seconds. He ended up getting knocked out. But that was his only loss. And ever since then, with Makhachev, unanimous decision over Chris Wade, unanimous decision over Nick Lentz. First round finish, actually 57-second finish of Gleason Tebow. First round submission of Kajan Johnson. The decision win over Arman Tsarukyan back in April 2019. And the unanimous decision win over Davey Ramos back in September 2019 at UFC 242. He was scheduled to fight Alexander Hernandez in April 2020. Of course, the coronavirus screwing up. That was when the UFC was on its forced hiatus of 2 months. And then UFC 254, he was supposed to fight Rafael Dos Anjos. Dos Anjos ends up testing positive for COVID. That fight's pushed back a few weeks, and then Makhachev gets injured. So this is going to be Makhachev's return. He's taking on Drew Dober. Drew Dober, 23-9. I believe both guys are ranked. Yeah, Islam Makhachev ranked number 14 in the lightweight division. Dober ranked number 15. Dober, he's been on a run as of late. I know he was submitted by Olivier Aubin-Mercier back in UFC 206, but let's see. He has the first round finish to Josh Berkman, decision wins over Frank Camacho and John Tuck, lost to Beneil Dariush by second round submission, but since then, 67 second finish of Marco Polo Reyes. Of course, he's not with the UFC anymore. The 70-second highlight knockout of Nasrat Haqparast. Pardon me. Nasrat Haqparast at UFC 246. That was a big win. And then he followed up with another big win a few months later when he finished Alexander Hernandez. So these are two great guys who are looking to take that next step in a highly competitive division like lightweight is. I mean, Makhachev has great grappling. Dober has struggled a bit when it comes to the grapplers. Makhachev, of course, we've seen he can be knocked out. Dober is a primarily stand-up fighter, I believe, but, you know, that one loss, like everyone can point out loss and be like, oh, glass chin. No, Makhachev is only one loss, and, you know, he's an excellent grappler, and he's gone the distance several times. But my point is, you can't point to that one knockout loss and lose all value in Makhachev. There's a reason the UFC is promoting him. You know, he's an excellent fighter, and these are two excellent fighters who are looking to, you know, and probably move up a few spots in the lightweight, if not get into the top 10 and take on a top 10 opponent in the next fight. That being said, I think Makhachev is, like I said, Dober sometimes struggles when it comes to grapplers. Makhachev, I think, has more momentum on his side. I'm going to go with Islam Makhachev by decision. All right. Now we get to the three title fights. Petr Yan taking on Aljamain Sterling for the Bantamweight Championship. Oh, we got to pick him. And this is a case where, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's a pick 'em fight. This, I mentioned before, Santos Rakic was one of two fights that I thought were going to be the most tough to predict. This one, also tough to predict. Looking at Topology, 61% believe Yan will win, and most believe it'll be by KO TKO. 39% believe in Sterling, and 60% of those people believe it'll be a submission. I don't know if we're going to get a finish in this one. Both these guys, this is a tough fight to predict. Both have similar height. Sterling's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage. Petr Yan, of course, ended up taking the title from Jose Aldo at UFC 251. Prior to that, he's got the win over Jinsu Son, Dr. Stoppage win over Douglas Andrade, win over John Dodson, win over Jimmy Rivera, head kick knockout of Uriah Faber. Some great stuff from Petr Yan, who only has one loss. And none of those losses have come to the octagon. And I believe that one loss was to, Magomedov. That is not a bad loss. And then he's taking on Aljamain Sterling, who's coming in on a 5-fight win streak. Ended up choking Corey Sandhagen out in 90 seconds back at UFC 250 to get this title shot. And look at this streak. Brett Johns, Cody Stamann, Jimmy Rivera, Pedro Munoz, Corey Sandhagen. Excellent competition that he has faced on the road to the title. And if you look at his losses, anyways, a loss in 2016 to Brian Caraway, and a loss in 2017 to Rafael Santos. Not bad losses. And then getting knocked out in 67 seconds by Marlon Moraes. Marlon Moraes, of course, the former WSOF Bantamweight champ and a former title challenger. I know Moraes has been on the down run, but I mean, at the time, that's not a bad loss. Really not a bad loss. And he's got a win over, and Sterling has a win over Augusto Mendes and Renan Barao. So, obviously, Petr Yan, durable, great striker. Sterling, one of the best jiu-jitsu games in this bantamweight division, if not in the UFC. I mean, you think of that statement fight, that Suolov submission, absolutely incredible. This one, pretty much near even, pretty much a pick 'em fight. Jan, we've seen the gas tank. We've seen him go the distance. Sterling, this is going to be his first time potentially going into the 4th or 5th round. So you're going to see Sterling try to take this to the ground early, I feel. Try to take this to the ground and lock up Jan in a submission. But even though Sterling seems to have the better grappling, I think Jan can, he can, I'm not sure if I can say he's going to be a better grappler. I shouldn't say that. But I think he can go toe-to-toe. I think he'll be able to withstand Sterling on the ground. This one is going to be tough. Both these guys are really tough to finish. So this one, it's a coin flip. I know everybody's been saying Sterling in the MMA media world. Sterling will catch Jan submission, force a tap, become the new champ. I'm gonna go Jan. I think Jan will retain the title. I think he will be able to withstand Sterling's grappling attacks. I think Jan will be able to compete with that. I think Jan has some excellent hands, some excellent striking. Like I said, durable and tough to finish. I think I need to see. It's tough. These are two of the best bantamweights in the world. They're the two best bantamweights in the UFC. Maybe arguable that they're the two best bantamweights in the world. I know you can make case for Juan Archuleta over in Bellator, Kyoji Origuchi over in Bellator and Ryzen. I'm going to go Jan. I think Jan has just a little more. That being the case, I can see Sterling winning this fight too, but I'm going to go with Jan. Like I said, this is probably the toughest fight to predict on this card. Speaking of, we're going to a fight which, okay, let's be real. Look at those odds. Amanda Nunes minus 1250, Megan Anderson plus 750. I mean, Amanda Nunes, she has faced a lot of top competition since defeating Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, she hasn't lost since losing at UFC 178 to Kat Zingano. Let me just read off the names that Nunes has won against since then. Shayna Baszler, first round finish. Sarah McMahon, first round finish. Valentina Shevchenko, close fight but decision win. Miesha Tate winning the bantamweight title on first round finish. Ronda Rousey, I can't put too much stock in that because Rousey pretty much had both feet out the door at that point. Valentina Shevchenko, now that one at UFC 215? Yeah, 215. That one I thought Shevchenko won, I will admit. But the judges saw the fight for Nunes. I want to see Nunes and Shevchenko 3. For whatever reason, the UFC does not want to book that. And Shevchenko just dominates at flyweight, though. Maybe they want to book Weili Zhang, see if she can get a couple more wins at her belt at strawweight and move her up to fight Shevchenko at flyweight. I don't know. I would rather see Nunes Shevchenko 3. Regardless, has the win over Shevchenko, 2 wins over Shevchenko. Finish of Raquel Pennington in absolute domination. The 52nd knockout, shock a knockout of Chris Cyborg to win the featherweight title and become a champ. Head kick knockout in the first round of Holly Holm. The decision win over Jermaine Durandamy. Felicia Spencer, I think, should have been finished. Credit to Felicia Spencer for going the distance, but the scorecards at the time that were given out, I think, were completely generous. I had Amanda Nunes with 10-8 rounds in 3 or 4 of those fights. I think the scorecard should have been 50-42 or 50-41. If not, we should have had a finish from Nunes. Megan Anderson, on the other hand, former Invicta featherweight champion, and so she was actually supposed to fight Chris Cyborg in the second featherweight title fight, but ended up getting injured. So instead, debuts at UFC 225, lost to Holly Holm, has that 61-second TKO of Kat Zingano. If you remember the head kick in which Megan Anderson's big toe actually went into Zingano's eye, which pretty much forces a halt to that fight. Then ends up fighting Felicia Spencer in Spencer's UFC debut and gets choked out in an absolute shocking fashion. Gets choked out by Felicia Spencer. And then since then, first round submission of Zara Farn, and then the first round knockout of Norma Dumont, which was a highlight, but okay, come on. Let's be real. Nunes has faced a higher level competition. Nunes has a better skill set. Not saying that Megan Anderson doesn't have a great skill set and isn't a great fighter, but Nunes is just next level. Come on, people. I think the debate is if Nunes is going to get the finish or not. I mean, if you look at those fights that I mentioned, it's either Nunes finishes it in the first round or it goes the distance. Now, that being said, I know Raquel Pennington was a 5th-round finish, but it was still a thorough domination. And, that, I guess, is an outlier. So Nunes either gets the finish early or this one goes the distance. I think she should have gotten the finish over Felicia Spencer. I don't think she's going to let both featherweight fights go the distance. I think Amanda Nunes can get the finish. Now, I remember watching James Lynch's preview video, and he said, Nunes should take this one to the ground and submit Anderson. If she keeps it standing, she's opening herself up for the upset. And yes, Anderson obviously has the puncher's chance. We can obviously be surprised by Anderson in this one. But at the same rate, Anderson may have the lanky body, but, Nunes has faced Holly Holm, who has a particular body, long limbs at a featherweight. Not at featherweight, at bantamweight. And we saw Nunes finish her in the first round. We saw Nunes, any reach advantage. Did Nunes have the reach advantage in that? Did Holm have the reach advantage in that one? Let me go back to that fight. Amanda Nunes has a 69-inch reach. What's Holly Holm's reach? Isn't it set? Oh, 69. So she didn't have that much of a reach. They were pretty even then. But regardless, with the kind of long limbs that Holm has, Nunes was able to work around it and get a finish there. There was no problem with that. Now, that being the case, if Nunes does take the fight to the ground, it's big trouble for Anderson. We've seen Anderson get submitted, and I think Nunes has the power to finish a fight on the ground. We've seen it before. So, Nunes, I think, is going to finish in the first round, maybe early second round. But regardless, I think Nunes, and again, I didn't use the graphics, I apologize. But Nunes is going to get the job done here. All right, let's talk about the big one. Israel Adesanya challenging Jan Blachowicz for the light heavyweight championship. Jan Blachowicz is looking for his first title defense since winning the title against Dominick Reyes at UFC 253. At UFC 253, of course, we saw Adesanya retain the middleweight title for a second time against Paulo Costa. Adesanya has title defenses against Costa and Yoel Romero. Won the interim belt against Kelvin Gastelum, that absolutely entertaining war at UFC 236. Ended up also becoming the undisputed champion by knocking out Robert Whittaker, 243. Adesanya, as you can see, minus 230 favorite. Jan Blachowicz, plus 185. Looking at the fight metrics for these two, if I can bring us there. Actually, let me see if I can bring you guys over to the fight metrics page here with the UFC tab. Yeah, UFC stats. Jan Blachowicz. Let's see, strikes landed per minute. Adesanya has the favorite, though Blachowicz and him are fairly more even when it comes to accuracy. Of course, Adesanya, one of the more elusive fighters, I think, in the UFC. Jan Blachowicz has scored takedowns. He'll try to bring the fight to the ground at least one time in this fight, maybe even more. But Adesanya, that 86% takedown defense. Now, that being said, we've seen Adesanya troubled a little bit. I think of the Kelvin Gastelum fight. But outside of that, Israel Adesanya, one of the more elusive fighters I just mentioned in this division. Just in the UFC in general. We can talk about Jan Blachowicz and the Polish power. And yes, he has some big power in his hands. Does he have the capability to finish Israel Adesanya? Probably. But, I think back to Adesanya Romero. It was an absolutely terrible fight. But Adesanya, I think, just had Romero completely fooled. The comparison has been beaten to death. But Adesanya reminds me of a prime Anderson Silva, where he just has that body and that skill set that just kind of, confuses fighters and leaves them absolutely frozen. And Adesanya has great attacks. Think about what I just said. He ended up facing Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa in his two middleweight title defenses. Two big guys, two dangerous guys, two heavy strikers. And he completely froze Romero, and Costa just had no answer for Adesanya. I know Costa's making the wine defense, but if that was true, first of all, I think Costa's just making excuses. And second of all, if that was true, Costa should not be fighting for a UFC title ever again. So that being said, I just think that as much as Blachowicz has the Polish power, I think Adesanya is probably arguably one of the best fighters in the UFC. Winning this title should certainly put him up there in the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world, let alone the UFC. And it just seems it would be absolutely appropriate if a highly hyped card like this one, and all the momentum that Adesanya has, the potential that he could be the next mainstream star in this sport, it would be only appropriate if he wins the light heavyweight title. I have Adesanya by third round finish. I think he can finish Blachowicz. I don't think this one's going to go the distance either way, but I think Adesanya can get it done. Third round finish. Adesanya will be a champ. So thank you all for tuning in to my little preview video, sharing my thoughts on the UFC. But I do want to mention JDS and Alistair Overeem. JDS and Alistair Overeem both released by the UFC. Obviously, JDS has a 4-fight losing streak, losing to some prime young names that have been up and coming in the UFC. Junior Dos Santos, his 4-fight losing streak. Let's see. I mean, he challenged Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title, lost. Obviously, Junior Dos Santos, former heavyweight champion, knocking out Cain Velasquez in the first UFC on Fox. So he lost to Miocic in that attempt to reclaim the title. Ends up running in with USADA. Ends up coming back in 2018. Went up for Blagoy Ivanov, tied to Ivasa, Derek Lewis. Lost to Francis Ngannou, got finished there badly. Got finished by Curtis Blades, Jairzinho Rosenstrike, and Cyril Gane. So those aren't some bad losses, but I say they aren't the worst losses, but I think it's clear that maybe JDS can't compete with some of the up-and-comers in this sport. Now, that being said, if you would ask me in like 2019, 2018, between these two, who I would be more surprised at being released, I would have said Alistair Overeem. I thought at that time Alistair Overeem was absolutely overrated, I will admit. But, I mean, you look at what Overeem has done since, obviously, he has the 4-fight win streak, then goes on to challenge Stipe Miocic for the title at UFC 203, loses that fight, ends up winning a pair of fights, I believe, against Mark Hunt and Fabricio Werdum, ends up getting brutally knocked out by Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blades. He makes that jump to Elevation Fight Team where Blades was, and then he gets a first-round finish against, I believe that was against quarantine brain going on now. I believe it was Sergey Pavlik. Ends up finishing Alexei Oleinik. He could have won against Jairzinho Rosenstrike. He was absolutely dominant and then got knocked out in the last second. Walt Harris, he got in trouble early on, but ends up coming back and finishing Harris. Augustus Sakai, no problem. 5th round finish. Volkov. I mean, Volkov was a number 5 against number 6. So I'm a little more shocked at Overeem, despite him reaching 40, getting released. But I guess it's just a matter of the UFC. You know, the UFC wants to go with the younger and cheaper fighters. So I guess this is just a casualty of that. So what happens next with these two? Doesn't seem like JDS is finished with fighting. I could see him easily going over to Bellator, competing, you know, like he would be another big name for the heavyweight division, and he could probably fight for the Bellator title in his second or third appearance. Alistair Overeem, I could also see him going over to Bellator. Remember, Alistair Overeem was once the Strikeforce champion. Scott Coker obviously was the big man in charge of Strikeforce, now the big man in charge of Bellator. Overeem was also Dream champion and a K1 champion, so I could see the owner of Ryzen has hinted maybe we could bring Overeem in and do like a you know, New Year's Eve show, because Overeem was also big in the Pride Fighting Championships. Now, that being said, I mean, are these guys still chasing heavyweight titles? Dos Santos for sure. I know Overeem was chasing one last heavyweight title run in the UFC. Ryzen doesn't exactly have heavyweight titles. They could probably make one for him. One championship, I guess Overeem could also be a possibility for Overeem. I mean, because they also promote kickboxing, Muay Thai bouts. But the heavyweight scene over there is lacking. I could see Overeem, Bellator, and Ryzen. PFL, I think both these guys could go over to the PFL, but I think their 2021 rosters were locked. Actually, they did make a signing. The PFL did. I have to have a look here who it was that they signed. But my primary thought was that they probably have to wait a year for the 2022 season. I don't know if these guys are going to wait a year for that. So I could see both in Bellator, maybe Overeem and Ryzen. PFL if they're willing to wait or something happens, but we'll see. 2 legendary UFC runs coming to an end. Sad to see, but what rides that they had. All right, that's going to do it for me, guys. The prelims are starting right now, so go enjoy the show on Tom O'Donnell, and I'll see you around. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the broadcast. Enjoy the fights.